So what if the whole fight against disinformation wasn't actually about stopping lies? What if it was about building an entirely new way to govern? Well, let's get into this explainer on Jacob Siegel's book, The Information State, which makes the pretty bold argument that we are living through a fundamental shift in how political power actually works.
You remember this, right? Around 2016, it felt like the word disinformation just exploded out of nowhere. As Siegel puts it, it was like overnight, every politician and news outlet suddenly agreed on a brand new story, that bad information was the real reason for all our problems, everything from political fights to public health crises.
Now, for Siegel, this all felt disturbingly familiar. See, he had been an army officer in Afghanistan, and he instantly recognized the language and the tools of information warfare. These were tactics designed for a foreign battlefield. But now, they were being turned inward, aimed squarely at the American public.
But as he dug deeper, he started to realize that the story was so much bigger than just censorship. This wasn't some temporary emergency measure. No, what he was seeing was the normal, everyday function of a totally new system of rule being built, kind of in plain sight.
And he gives this system a name, the information state. According to him, this isn't just a small change. It's a whole new chapter in the history of political power, one that's built on everything that came before it, but is also something completely different.
So what is it exactly? Well, Siegel argues the information state is not a democracy that rules by getting our consent, and it's not an authoritarian regime that rules by brute force. It rules by something else, control. It works by managing the digital world we all live in, subtly shaping our reality and engineering our agreement without us even noticing.
And this is where it really clicks. Authoritarianism uses force. Democracy is supposed to seek our consent, but the information state, it does something else entirely. It works to monopolize our attention and then tweak our perceptions so that certain outcomes just start to feel natural, inevitable. Think about it. It doesn't need to break down your door if it can control what you see on your screen.
To really understand how this new state works, we've got to understand its most basic building block. And to do that, we have to ask a question that sounds super simple, but is actually anything but.
What actually is information? I mean, we use that word 100 times a day, but the meaning is incredibly slippery. To give you an idea, the book points out that the Oxford English Dictionary entry for the word information is over 9,000 words long. Yeah, this is not a simple concept. The word itself has been a total shapeshifter throughout history. It started with the Latin informare, which just meant to give form to something. Then it meant a criminal investigation. By the 1800s, it kind of settled on meaning raw facts. But then, after World War II, everything changed. Information theory came along and redefined it as a purely technical thing, a measure of electronic signals, totally separate from any human meaning.
But cutting right through all that confusion, a professor named James Benninger came up with a simple, really powerful answer. He argued that no matter what form it takes, from the DNA in our cells to global governments, information has one universal function. It controls. It imposes order on a system. It organizes things out of chaos.
And this reveals a principle that's as old as time. A society's power to maintain control has always been directly linked to its information tech. The ancient Sumerians needed writing to manage irrigation on the rivers. Today, our incredibly complex, globalized world absolutely needs digital information just to function.
Okay, so if the function of information is control, what's the logic that's driving it all? Well, a French philosopher named Jacques Ellul actually gave it a name decades ago.
He called it technique. Now, this is really important. Technique is more than just technology. It's a whole mindset. It's a way of looking at the world where literally everything, art, politics, even our own free time, is seen as a problem that needs to be solved with maximum efficiency.
The book gives us a perfect example, TikTok. The platform is pretty much the purest form of technique you can find. It takes something as random as entertainment and applies this ruthless efficiency to it, feeding you a perfectly optimized stream of content. Your leisure time stops being, well, leisure. It becomes a data-driven process. And those older, less efficient ways of having fun, they just get pushed to the side.
And this all leads to one single, inevitable conclusion. The ultimate goal of technique is to turn everything into information. Every human experience, every conversation, every belief, it has to be converted into data. Why? Because data allows for the most efficient possible control.
So this brings us to the biggest question of all, right? What does this system of total efficient control actually mean for us as individuals? What does it mean for our freedom?
This isn't some new fear. Way back in the 19th century, Alexis de Tocqueville warned about what he called a soft despotism. He imagined a government that wouldn't have to be brutal. Instead, it would just manage its citizens like a gentle shepherd, covering society with this dense network of tiny, complicated rules until the will to even think for yourself just fades away.
And here's the central mind-bending paradox for us today. In the information state, the simple act of participating online, sharing your opinion, liking a post, searching for something, that very act provides the system with the raw data it needs to manage you. You are literally completing the circuit of your own control.
And this leads to what might be Siegel's most powerful and unsettling thought. You're free to ask the world's biggest search engine for anything you want. But when you don't even have to ask anymore because it already knows what you want before you do, is that really freedom? Or is it a kind of servitude that's just become so efficient, so seamless that we can't even tell the difference anymore?
So where does this leave us? Siegel doesn't really offer up an easy 5-step solution. Instead, he says the first, most critical step is much simpler. It's just to see the world as it actually is, to recognize this system, to name it, and to understand how it operates.
Which really leaves us with a final question to think about the next time you pick up your phone. As you're scrolling through your feed, are you the one making the choices, or are you just following a path that has been perfectly and efficiently laid out for you?